Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. We are here with Nora. Nora is coming into the room, and welcome. Thank you, Nora, for being here. Just as a quick reminder, we are at AI in Writing, Plain Language Edition. So this is, we're talking a lot about AI for clear communication. And we are joined today by Nora Diaz, who is a translation industry legend. And we love her. She is a super successful professional, but also a super generous professional. And she is a fantastic teacher. So we are so happy to have you.
Thank you, Romina, and congratulations on the summit. I'm sure everyone is having a wonderful time, and I'm happy to be here.
So we're going to start with maybe, I know that some people have watched the presentation and will have questions, but would you give us a little bit of a background of how come you work with AI?
Well, yes, certainly. So I love technology and I'm always interested in learning about new things that are available. And I have been experimenting and teaching about AI since ChatGPT first came on the scene. So yeah, that's just constantly trying to learn and trying to figure out what will work best for my use cases and sharing that with my colleagues.
So tell us what you do um, on a daily professional basis.
Right. I'm a translator and a conference interpreter and a trainer. So, what that means is that I'm either translating or reviewing materials that have been translated by others. I translate in the medical and technical fields. So, I translate mostly manuals and materials for patients or informed consents, device manuals and instructions and things like that. I also translate a lot of marketing materials like surveys um, and just general types of materials. And I translate into Spanish, which is my native language. I am Mexican and live in northern Mexico. If I'm not translating, I am doing conference interpreting, which also has a lot of uses for AI to support interpreters. And what that means is that I will be at a conference and then there is a speaker speaking in English, and I do simultaneous interpreting into Spanish. And the other thing I do is I'm a trainer and I train mostly translators and interpreters about the use of technology and AI recently.
Yes, and that you do that fantastically well. So I am very grateful that I've had the chance to uh, learn with you. I want to, as people are coming in, I want to ask one um, question that we had in the community. Actually, Kate, you're here. Would you like to ask your question, Kate?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Kate.
Yes, I'm very new to this. I'm so happy to have this learning opportunity. So I didn't have to flail around on the web trying to find information and waste a lot of time. But I'm just wondering, we're right now, but are we just going to be continually inundated with chat bots and different programs and constantly have to make decisions about what we're going to use? And how do we cope with that?
Yes. I think what we have seen in the past 2 years is that there have been tools that have been launched and then they have disappeared, they have gone away. I think by now, because of course these tools are expensive to run to put together, to maintain, and to improve. And so you need to have, or companies need to have very deep pockets to be able to provide a product that is sustainable in the long run. So I think by now things are kind of stabilizing, and there are some clear, I don't want to say leaders, market leaders, but basically that's what they are. They are here and probably to stay. The ones that have been created, of course, ChatGPT is a clear market leader. And then there are things, for example, that Google has put out, like Gemini and other tools that they have put out recently. That's not going away, I don't think. Microsoft's version, which is Copilot, which is basically ChatGPT under the hood, I don't think that's going away either. And the other one that I see a lot of movement around is, of course, Claude. Even if you walk through an airport, you'll see that Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, has a huge marketing budget. You see Claude, ads in airports today. I haven't seen ChatGPT announced in an airport anywhere, but Claude is all over the place. And so that tells me that they are serious about this. Other things are they haven't made such a big splash. There are tools like, for example, Llama from Meta, the owner of Facebook, but they have decided to limit access to some regions. So for that reason, for example, being in Mexico, I'm unable to access that. And I think that's probably not a good move if they want to have good market penetration, because if some regions are being restricted, then of course people who have no access to those tools won't use them and will go for the ones that are more readily available. I think maybe, Kate, what's going to happen is also that more and more people are going to start seeing or learning ways to use their own models or to run them locally instead of using a chatbot that is publicly available. But well, the thing is that these tools have made it so easy to develop other things themselves that it is possible that people with fewer technical capabilities than would have been required, let's say 2 years ago, will be able to start building things around these chatbots. Or so I understand what you're saying. It feels overwhelming at times. It's like, how am I ever going to be able to keep up with everything that's coming out? So, but for me, what I have decided is I will be experimenting with a few of with the major players and keep using those unless something comes up that is very specific for my use case and that would make sense for me to try.
Thanks. No, that's brilliant. I feel much more confident now.
I think that that's a very good point that you just made, to say, okay, there's so many players, there's definitely some market leaders. Go familiarize yourself with those, and then go into and I am at that stage, like looking and saying, oh, okay, there's this smaller player that I like for whatever reason, right? The interface is nice, the way that the model was trained works well for my use cases, and one of such models for me is Mistral, if you want to know, and it's the proliferation that I see is not so much in the interfaces. I mean, the interfaces are proliferating, the bots, but people are also using a lot of the models behind those interfaces for their own applications. And for those of you who are interested in subject matter applications, Scott Mayer will sort of pick up the face-off from and some ideas from Nora's presentation to talk about using these models behind the scenes in your own applications. For example, for professions like dentistry and interacting with patients. So there's a lot of different use cases. And I am curious, please feel free to jump in the chat and ask.
Romina, if I could
Yeah.
add something. And what I'm seeing also is that there starts to be some differentiation in the use of the chatbots or the usability for certain use cases. For example, if people in the audience are mostly writers or, editors, I think the clear winners for that particular use case would be the Plus version of ChatGPT that now has Canva. which means that as soon as you give it a prompt that requires edit, that implicates or implies that you are writing something or you are editing something, it goes into Canva mode, which is basically an editable document where you have the chatbot interface still on the left-hand side, but then you have the document in an editable format on the right-hand side. And that is a game changer for writers. And the other tool that also has this great capabilities that could be very usable for writers is Claude, because Claude does something where if you ask it to produce several pieces of content, instead of producing it as one long running piece, it will prepare little, documents with the individual things. For example, I was doing some training for trainers, for educators recently, and we were asking the chatbot to Claude specifically to prepare several things. For example, an article on a specific topic, a quiz about the article, some grading criteria, and different things that a trainer and educator would need. And each of those items was prepared by Claude as a separate document. And then as you could click into the document and continue the conversation for that document. And that for me is also a game changer, very different from what you can get out of Copilot or Gemini, for example.
Yeah, I think it's a good just to I saw Julieta coming in and she was asking about interpreter use. How does somebody who maybe is working in spoken language too use them? And there's a lot of preparation that can happen to that. So I want to come back to that, but I want to quickly answer something that's on the chat about the different models. There's two things that we want to make sure everybody understands. There's the bots that we interact with, and I'm going to share again on screen. I'm sharing screen. Let's see. Right here. So this is the interface that you are seeing, right? ChatGPT's interface. This is the model that it's using. And somebody asked on the chat, are the models trained for specific objectives? And in some ways they are. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but the bottom line is that different models are trained on different tasks and on different corpora, on different data, so they can do different things. And just to, again, one of the questions that we asked this morning, if we ask ChatGPT 4, what is AI? We get one kind of answer. And if we ask ChatGPT 01, what is AI? We're going to get a different kind of answer. And one of the things that we see right away is that it says the model is thinking. It's making some calculations. It's trying to show you that it's processing. It doesn't think in the way we think, but it's more open in saying, I'm processing your information. A couple of other ones that we mentioned, Claude, which is one that Nora has used in her presentation, and Perplexity AI, which was the first one to be able to not only answer questions based on its training data, but also go online and look up things as if it was Google. So with that distinction, the chatbots where you plug in your question is one thing, and then the models that are used behind the scenes is another. And the next layer is being able, as you can do in the GPTs, which you're going to see that with Diana's session, you can add your own data, your own documents, to be able to train the model on that, or not train it, but at least guide it to answer questions based on your own content. So with that distinction, let me go to Carla, who has, I think, may have a question.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, I'm back. I would like to ask because I know that there's different AI, so how would you say it? Like suggestion would be to try them all to see which one fits more with us.
Yes. My suggestion would be get a free account for each of the chatbots and give each of those chatbots the same prompt, and then evaluate the answer and see what you get. Because I think you will find that this is not a one size fits all solution. There will always be, a chatbot that's better for certain things than for others. For example, if you're doing research, don't go to Gemini or ChatGPT. Perplexity is best for research. And Claude is also very good for research because it cites sources. And ChatGPT will also give you sources, but sometimes those sources are not the highest quality sources. You click on them and it takes you to something that is either a dead link, a dead link, or something that's not the best. For example, for me, I work in translation. And so when I click on a source, it takes me to a website that was translated by a machine, which is not the best way to validate information. So, yes, definitely do try them all. And I would say do that in what we call a production environment. So, don't only play with it when you have a few free minutes here and there, but actually use them. Have all of the tabs open at once and use them for actual use cases. So you can, and it takes only a few seconds to paste the prompt into the various chatbots and then take a few minutes to evaluate the response. And maybe after a day or two of doing that, you will have a favorite and you will see which one is best for which. And just as Romina was showing us, for example, even within ChatGPT, there are different models that you can pick with the drop down menu. And some are better for example, for mathematic calculations. Others are better for language and things like that.
Okay. Now I have another question. I know that ChatGPT is compatible with Soho One. I don't know if you guys know that app, but do you know if any other of these AIs is compatible with this kind of softwares for like Soho?
Well,
Soho, it's like it has a marketing automation and it's an integrated, it's like a HubSpot, maybe.
Well, I'm not familiar with the specific software that you're mentioning, but I will say that for these tools to be, or for the models, what is called the large language model, which is what exists behind this chatbot interface, the integration to other types of software is usually done via something that is called an API, an automated programming interface, where you have to get a key. Now, OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, is really good at giving you easy access to create your API keys. So I've seen a lot of integrations of ChatGPT into other tools simply because it's that easy to go and get the key, paste it into your tool, and then you have that backdoor connection. Other tools, like, for example, they probably have it. I'm just not aware of it. It's not that easy to get. Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, I haven't seen any API integrations, at least in the tools that I use. Romina, maybe you have seen
So Claude and Perplexity, Mistral, they all have APIs, and they help the way the APIs work is you need to get a little bit more involved. For example, I work. One of the questions in the chat was about confidentiality, and so one of the things that I do is deploy locally, and you'll see that in my video. Deploy locally so that I can interact with a downloaded language model through an API. In my case, I use a lot of the BERT models and Llama models because they're slender and they're a little faster for me. But you can also, I also interact with Perplexity and Mistral through the APIs. So these APIs are basically like a line, a wireless line that gets you from your environment to the language model. and you can integrate it. And I was looking up Zoho as for marketing automation, and it's similar as a platform to other platforms like Zapier and Make, where you can integrate different tools. And for example, you can say, create a list of blogs that you want to read. Plug that into one of these integration platforms, connect that through an API to your favorite models, and then get a summary of all those blogs so that you can prioritize your reading. For example, I say quite often that the summaries are not the only thing you should read, because learning happens when we process the information in its context. But these automations can help you sort out, okay, what am I going to read first? What do I need to read first? And that's one of the things that the APIs are very useful for, is connecting your resources that you want to digest into whatever environment you're working with. So if you're working with marketing and you want to connect, you want to summarize product information to come up with, I don't know, a packaging copy, you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Let's see, where is our chat? Make sure that I have it ready. Confidentiality. Do we have any other questions? Any other
Romina, I would like to address this one. Do all AI models use what we input as part of its own training? I'm thinking of confidentiality. And the answer is, if it's free, it's very likely that the product or the price is you and your information. So for ChatGPT specifically, there are two settings that you can change. Go into your settings and change something that is called improve the model for everyone. Turn that to off. And that basically means, no, don't use my data to train the model. And the other thing that you can do is, of course, pay for the service, because when you have a paid subscription, it's less likely that they will use your data for, for training the model. And then there are some suggestions in general about the information that you input in the model. Never input anything, even if you have a paid version, anything that is super confidential. For example, if you are writing a patent about something that is not out yet, it's an invention, don't give that information to the model, because even if they say they won't be using it, we really have no assurances, no guarantees that they won't do that. And the other suggestion is to try to chunk your information. I think we have this this dream where we could give, for example, translators, where we could give a 300-page manual to a chatbot and then get a perfectly translated and formatted and laid out perfectly consistent Spanish or French or Portuguese version of the same manual, or maybe several languages at once. That's not a reality at the moment. And the only thing that can happen if you give it a large amount of content to deal with is that you are increasing the chances that your information can be scraped and can be used. So instead of sending, for example, the workflow for translators is not to get the chatbot to translate for us, is to use it as support. And so we don't use it for absolutely everything we have to translate. Maybe there is a phrase or a sentence here and there where we want the chatbot to help us clarify, write better, rephrase, but we only send it a phrase here, a phrase there, instead of giving it whole documents to process. So I have gone through or I have tried to read the confidentiality information for each of these developers, and they are intentionally obscure. And I was at the conference for medical writers earlier this year, where there were some lawyers and regulators also speaking at the same conference. And what they said after doing a deep dive into all of this is, we don't know. There is, it's intentionally obscure. So very likely because they are using that information, right, Romina?
Yes, and I think that is a very good and important question, and an aspect of AI technology that is in flux Yes, there are some of the bots and some of the interfaces will give you the ability to say, okay, don't use my information. However, I still caution people, even if you choose that option to not share it, you're still uploading it to the cloud. So there is a chance of being scraped, and that's why sometimes deploying locally becomes important. And it is a give and take that we're evolving into this economy of data exchange as part of the price that we're paying, right? I see Heba has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nora, yeah, I adapt what are you saying, but I also add something. I don't know if it's helpful or not. I delete the history continuously or the chat. Do you think it will make a difference or?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I
catch-
delete the history. I delete the history. Do you
Oh,
think?
yeah, you turn it off. Yes, like you use temporary chat. As we're seeing on Romina's screen now, that there is a temporary chat option at the bottom of the model selection dropdown. And when you enable that, anything that you enter is not going to be, and it says right there, right? All of those things are turned off. The conversation is not going to be saved in history. It will not be used to train, and it won't be used to create memories. So yes, that's definitely a way of doing that. And of course, the trade-off is you don't have it saved in your history for later reference, but it's not going to be used to train the model. Yes, thank you for that, Heba.
Let's go back to, see, I want to make sure that I'm sharing everybody, okay? And I want to take a few minutes before Nora has to go to share about your translation summit. Nora, two of our speakers during this summit, Nora and Josh, put on an incredible summit for translators and interpreters. And you want to share a little bit about what you do there?
Oh, yes. And thank you for being a speaker for us this year, Romina. We are thrilled to have you. So the AI in Translation Summit, and I will be sharing the link here in the chat, is coming up next week. And we have a little over 20 presentations on AI and the different uses of AI. So if you'd like to join us, we also have free registration, and registration is open. You basically come and take in these sessions that are aimed at, they are all actionable. That's something that we insist very much on. They have to be something that you can use right away, that you can put into practice right away. And I think many of the presentations, even though we call this the AI in Translation Summit, many of the presentations are actually usable for professionals in other fields. So I would encourage you to come and check it out. It's always, just like this summit, there's always a great community. We will have a special type of session this year. Last year, we had over 7,000 people attend the summit. And this year, we also expect, a large number of attendees. And a very enriching part of that is the sessions where we have interaction. We don't do Q&A sessions like this one, but we do something that is called a spotlight session, where we watch a short video and then we discuss in breakout groups, and that is really very enriching for everyone. And this year we will also have some sessions that are called Speak Your Mind, where people will be able to discuss their concerns and suggest anything that they have learned and share that with others. And we find that learning together is what works best. And so hopefully we'll see you there next week.
Fantastic. Okay, I want to close with a bit of a wrap-up question about how do you see yourself using AI now versus when you started? Do you integrate it? Do you actually use it every day? Is it in your different interfaces, in your writing, in your recording? Was it there at the beginning, or have you changed?
Well, I think we, just like everyone else, I keep seeing the integrations of AI everywhere. just yesterday, I saw that they have added them to Yahoo News, where now you don't even have to read the whole news article. You just can click a button, get the takeaways, and that's it. I'm not happy about that. I think people need to keep reading. And so this tendency towards summarization, I don't know, I think it's going to be detrimental to our reading skills and our comprehension skills. But do I use it? Yes, I use it all the time. Do I use it in the same way as when it first came out? No. It has been an evolution, right? Not only because I have learned how to prompt it better, but also because the hype has died down a little. And now we understand better the limitations of AI, which something that's very important. And at least in the translation space, we are trying to raise awareness with our clients about that fact, that there are a lot of limitations and there are a lot of areas where a human eye is still very important. A human brain is still very important. And even when using AI. So do I use it? Yes. But I use it for refinement. I don't use it a lot for text generation from scratch because I'm not a writer, right? I'm a translator. So, but I use it to refine things. Like, for example, if I post a lot on some social media places, actually, Let's Connect on LinkedIn, and I always write. And if I feel like my post is lacking a little, I will ask AI to help me polish it a bit or to confirm I'm not a native speaker of English. So if I write something and I'm not entirely sure that it sounds okay, I will check with the AI to do that. And one thing that I've been experimenting with a lot that we didn't have back when this first came out is, of course, mobile AI, which is AI in our phones, in our tablets. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in the AI in Translation Summit. And I love playing with new features. Just before logging into this call, I saw that ChatGPT launched an desktop application for Mac some months ago. And now today they launched the application for Windows. So after we're done here, I'm going to go experiment with that. And these changes make it more likely that I will be using the tool a lot more. I think that's true for the adoption of any type of technology. The easier it is to use, the more present it is in the tools we already use every day, the more likely it is that we will adopt it.
That's thank you for that, because I think it's very encouraging to see that somebody who is so proficient as you is changing and is considering things and is now like things are settled in. So I want to give a big round of applause to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Romina.
Thank you. And we're going to welcome into the Q&A Diana, who's going to talk about custom GPTs. Bye, Nora.
Hello, everyone.
Congratulations on the summit. And I'm going to stay to listen to Diana.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. That was really interesting. Actually, I got very intrigued by listening to that. So thank you for that, Nora.
And so right now, if you guys, you may have watched or maybe interested in Diana's presentation, which is about building custom GPTs with a very interesting twist, because Diana has done that through also the use of AI. And it would be great if we can hear a little bit about what you do and how you got the presentation done.
Okay, certainly. Yes. So originally I was a writer working in high tech, and then took a little bit of time off for my son, and then spent so much time volunteering for the school district that they ended up hiring me, and I became an educator. I'm here in Silicon Valley, where it's very difficult to find people in STEM because they all work in Silicon Valley in very high paid jobs. So even though my degrees are in English and communications, I ended up running the STEM lab for the school district here, like a first of its kind lab that they then based all the other ones on. And so I ended up teaching coding and robotics, which was great. I absolutely loved it. And I did that up until the pandemic. And then everything shut down with the pandemic, but then I was looking for new challenges. And when I first heard about ChatGPT from my college-age son, I was basically hooked from the very first sentence and the very first interaction. And I just realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life, because this is a tool that is so uniquely suited for writers. It's a language model, and this is what I do. It's language. So I started writing a lot of blog posts about it on LinkedIn, and those did well. They had a lot of engagement, and that turned into a newsletter. I also have a podcast on Spotify, and then I sometimes do YouTube videos, and I'm on Substack. So I do it all just for digital literacy. I just call it sort of my fun project, but my goal is just to educate people about AI.
That is fantastic, and thank you. If you guys, for those of you who are on LinkedIn, Diana has a fantastic newsletter that she publishes and she produces with the help of AI. So would you share a little bit about how you put together your presentation?
Yeah. So initially, when I was doing my newsletter, I would write it, but then use it kind of in the same way Nora described, get some refinement on the language from ChatGPT, just because ChatGPT is very good with language, which is very helpful. And, you know, I am a native speaker of English. But it is very helpful to have somebody read over your writing. So I found ChatGPT tremendously helpful for that. It's like having another writer in the room, or as I refer to it in my presentation, as having an intern. And, you know, I always feel like I'm the higher level writer and ChatGPT is the lower level writer. So that's how I was using it at first. And even that was helpful, helped me get my work done a lot faster. It could proofread for me. I get migraine headaches, which are completely debilitating for a writer because it gives you something called aphasia, which affects your language centers. It affects my ability to spell. That makes me double up on words. It makes me put words in the wrong order. It's part of what prevents me from working professionally in writing situations. But ChatGPT is perfect for that because it checks everything I write to make sure I'm not putting my words in the wrong order. So it's enabled me to put out a daily newsletter, which I never could have done in the era before ChatGPT, and that has restored my self-confidence. So that's been amazing. Now, something changed. Oh my gosh, it was a year ago now at the developers conference, Dev Day for OpenAI. Sam Altman announced something called custom GPTs. The name is terrible because it's super confusing, but custom GPTs are a customized form of ChatGPT. And basically what you could do if you have a pro account, unfortunately, you do have to have either an enterprise or one of the $20 a month accounts to do this, but you can create your own little version of ChatGPT and you can program it to just do whatever it is you want it to do. And you don't need to know how to code in order to do this. You just basically have a little conversation back and forth with the model, and it'll prompt you and it'll ask you, what is it you're trying to build? So in this case, I'm like, I want something that'll help me get my newsletter done even faster. So I had this conversation with the GPT and we created something that we called the Deep Learning Daily GPT. And I said, all right, well, I want you to make sure the formatting is correct every day, that I have a heading and subheadings and LinkedIn hooks. Give me at least 5 of those to choose from. I want you to do my SEO optimization for me, my search engine optimization. So come up with all the tags that I need for that. And then I started adding additional sections to it because you can edit these little customized AIs at any time. So I said, you know, I'm getting a lot of readers from other countries who speak English as a second language. So let's add a vocabulary key. And then let's add FAQs. So if it's difficult, if they didn't understand something in the body of the article, they could read the frequently asked questions, and that would make the material more understandable. And then I was like, I should list my sources, but maybe in a way that allows me to put even more sources in there. So we added a section, meaning my GPT and I, a section called additional resources for inquisitive minds. And then I found that by having a GPT, it always had context of what we were talking about. And so it was really, really good at doing my artwork. So I didn't even really have to write a good artwork prompt. I could simply say, create artwork for today, create artwork that goes with this story, create artwork that illustrates what we've been talking about, right? Which would basically be what you would say to an artist that was in the boardroom with you when you were discussing a story pitch. And my custom GPT always had that context because it already knew my preferences. It already knows the audience for my newsletter on LinkedIn. It already knows my likes and my dislikes. And so it just creates really good artwork that is my style. And it also knows what I don't like, right? So leave these things out. These are phrases I don't like. This is an art style I don't like. So a lot of times I'll get artwork that's usable on the first try. Which from an environmental standpoint is also good. So I'm not needlessly using the AI again and again and again and taking 25 tries to generate the header artwork I need for my article. It's also a huge time saver. So it's great. I've just found it to be just a tremendous way to increase my workflow. And it was what allowed me to add the podcast and also go over to Substack as well, because I can get my work done so quickly.
That is a fantastic summary. And you touched upon a question that came up earlier today. So I want to bring it up to the surface, which is you have an environment where you have your voice, your content, the format and structure that you want. So the AI has access to all of that, and you can get your artwork done quicker, for example. What's the environmental concern, which I think is a great a great aspect to bring in when we use AI? What happens when the models work behind the scenes?
Yeah.
with
So
the-
I recently went to visit my brother in Virginia. He lives just outside DC, and that place is like the data center capital of the world. And while I was there, in the first few minutes I was there, the window shook like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you got earthquakes here. And he said, we don't. They're blasting the ground to make room for new data centers. He goes, they keep putting in data center after data center after data center. And that's because of the great demand for AI. It requires so much storage capacity and server capacity and whatever else for these machines. But they also require a great demand on our electricity grid. And our electricity grid is old, it's aging. So you may have heard recently that they're bringing Reactor 1 back online for 3 Mile Island, or they want to by 2026, in order to generate more electricity, again, because of the great power demands of AI. I'm an environmentalist, so even though I love using this tool of AI, I'm conscious of how I use it, so I'm not needlessly using it, just knowing about the power demands that this places and the environmental demands. And, I've even written articles for my newsletter about like, well, can AI help us find a solution to climate change? Ironically, if AI is working on climate change, it's also using up a lot of resources while it's doing it, while it's searching for climate change. I mean, there's an irony there.
Yeah, but we do have now and recently in the in lots of places where people interact, the PyTorch conference, the Gen AI conference, people are talking about developing slender models that are tailored to specific tasks, so they don't need to compute over everything that was possibly ever published. So those are things that developers are doing to make sure, try to help models be faster, use less energy, need less compute. In general, though, the compute power, the power that we need to generate all these answers is going to grow because this is a tool. And, at the beginning, if we think about any of the tools that we've used, TV, maybe, when our grandparents had the first TV in their neighborhood, there was one TV and everybody went to watch to that house, or one radio. Maybe when cell phones came out, the head of household had a cell phone. Now everybody has cell phones. So now we're all using the tool. So we need to think about how to use it effectively. I like that, not needlessly use it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a good way to think of it is to be mindful in your generations in AI. And I mean, I use AI for fun. I write fan fiction as a hobby because I write because I love to write, and I'll use AI to help me there too for brainstorming and again to read over to make sure I'm not reversing my words when I'm writing. But I'm mindful there too about how and when I use it. So because I know I'm like, this is generations of AI, and I know how powerful these machines are. I like what you said there about smaller models that may be able to use less resources. And I know like their Apple Intelligence is supposed to run resident on the phone and then only go out to OpenAI if there's a query that it needs to go out, and the rest can run on your phone. Like these are these smaller parameter models that they're talking about. So those will be good.
Yeah, that's
I have a question. Again,
Of course.
another very basic question.
yes.
Why does it use so much energy? Why? What is it that I'm obviously not seeing something very obvious, but why does it use more energy than just using your computer for anything else? Is it just because it's communicating with so many computers? But how is that different from like Googling something? I know it's very basic, but tell me, I need to understand.
No, it's a good question. You're asking the right question. Romina, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to take it?
Maybe we can both go ahead first, and then I can.
Okay, so your computer is doing what it always does, right? You're interacting on a browser and you're using ChatGPT. Your computer's fine. It's what's happening on the other end that's sucking power and building data centers and whatever else. The way I usually explain ChatGPT to people is they've taken all of the world's knowledge, which is basically what's on there, whether it was legal or not, and use it as training data into these models. Matter of fact, the current models that they have run out of things to train on. Like they are out of training data and they're looking for new things to train on, which may have been covered in some of these talks when they're talking about privacy, but there is so much training data that goes into these models. But if now they're large language models, right, LLMs, if they have to sort through all of that data when you make a query.
Can you tell me exactly what is training data? What do you mean?
Yeah.
When you say
Okay.
training data?
That's a good question. Okay. So if I were to build a model, right? Like one of the classes I took through LinkedIn was about that, right? Like how to build your own language model. In order to build a language model, you have to put something into it, right? That it's going to search from. So what kind of data am I going to put in there in order for it to pull things back out of it? So I don't know if growing up you ever did any kind of coding, and you did things with like if-then statements, and you had to kind of put a little bit of data in there before it could pull things back out. Like think of it as like a database, right? And you have to put things in the database, but language models are a little bit different because they can predict things out of there, but you have to stuff something in there first before it can pull things back out. Romina, can you explain that better than I can?
No, I think this is it's a process to get to see that, and I want to share a couple things. One is what it trains on. The training data is in the case of writing, any written piece that it can get its hands on. And for ChatGPT, for example, it has been trained on everything that exists on the web that is freely accessible, and some things that may not have been so freely accessible.
Yes.
So think about all of Wikipedia, all of the newspaper articles, all of Shakespeare's, all of Don Quixote's, everything went into training the model. Now, the part that's computationally expensive is that the model reading these things doesn't read the way we do. It doesn't read a rose by any other name. It transforms that into numbers. And what you hear when you think about transforming into numbers is at the very beginning, the way things were transformed into numbers had a few layers or a few aspects called parameters, and now there's millions of aspects called parameters because it's reading everything in context. It's transforming everything into math in context. And I am going to share, let's see if I can share these. Can you guys see these vectors on screen? Okay, so this is a two-dimensional way of representing words and relationships. Over on the left, there's a three-dimensional way of saying if in the world of lexicon we put Italy here and Japan here, this is where Rome as a capital will be. This is Tokyo as a capital will be. Now we can represent these. And this, of course, is a very simple way of representing words. We need more complexity because we cannot possibly put all the contexts of those words into 2 dimensions. So we're going to 3 dimensions, and then we go to 4 dimensions, and then we have multi-dimensional ways of representing. And I'm going to show you how that actually looks. This is how models read. They look at a sentence. For example, artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the world. And it comes up with all these numbers. And if you see here, this is called a tensor, which is a fancy way of saying it's a collection of numbers. A 3-dimensional tensor is a vector that has 3 numbers. A tensor can have a lot of numbers, and all of these.
Is a tensor a meaning unit?
A tensor, yes, I think that's a great inference. It's a meaning unit for the model. But for example, one of my naive things that I thought about when I started doing this is, okay, so now how do I turn this tensor into a word? Oh, you cannot do that because they're meaning units. They're the equivalent of our morphemes in language. You know, like for example, the word reinstate, reiterate, reapply. So has meaning for us, even though is not a single word. These numbers have their own meaning to the model. In math, it's all math. And the way, so when you stuff all that knowledge in by way of numbers, it takes a lot of space to transfer into numbers every word in its context, because it's not just we as humans have a unique ability to say the bank, and we say we can relate the bank to the bank that we go to do financial things at, the bank at the school where we sit and wait for our kid, the bank of a river. AI doesn't have that ability.
Each of those numbers is a semantic feature.
Each of these numbers, so inside here, I'm highlighting one of them, for example, here, is a semantic feature of the word that is analyzed right here. So if you can see, let me see if I can go to the editor. Each one has many, it cannot even tell me because it has so many features. So when you go in, and maybe I can show you, this is a rendition of what this would look like in 2 dimensions for the model. In this case, I'm using a very simple model having 268 dimensions. Or 268 parameters. This is super simple. The model's GPT has billions of parameters. So each of these, for each word, it will have 1 billion numbers or more than 1 billion numbers. So this is where the computation becomes expensive in the sense of computing power, but also in the sense of electricity needed.
And eventually real estate, from what they were saying.
So yeah, because the way it's incredible to see the computer features, computer parts where this runs, our computers run on CPUs, central processing units, which are chips the size of a little dongle, something like this, right? Now there's AI runs on chips that were originally developed for gaming, GPUs. So if you have friends or kids or you are a gamer, usually you have a computer that has a GPU that's very good at processing visual information. And visual information is heavier than textual information. We can shrink text into a very small amount of memory. Visual information needs more, so graphic chips were able to deal with more. But of course, it is one thing to say, oh, I can save Shakespeare's books into one USB, and another thing is to say I want to save all of the internet. Then a USB is not enough anymore. And now the models work with visual, as Diana was mentioning. I was like, okay, now I can say, read all this text and come up with a graphic. And so all of that adds to the processing that needs to be done. Let's see, what other things?
When we think, oh, are there ideas before language? Can we have thoughts without language? So that would be kind of like the thought before the language.
This is a very philosophical and interesting question, and to see, and this is, I think, one of the questions about how AGI, artificial general intelligence, might look like, and whether we are able to, it's going to think in its own way, and how these numeric features will play a role into decision-making awareness, if there is such a thing one day as artificial intelligence awareness. So those are very good. This is what people are doing research on and trying to, there's been a lot of talk lately with Sam Altman, who is one of the main figures at OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, about his predictions on artificial general intelligence. So lots of interesting conversations for figuring out whether artificial intelligence is actually, can get to processing language the way we do.
So if AI becomes artificial general intelligence, or what sometimes people call this super intelligence, where AI can think like a human, which it doesn't actually do now, what do you think the power demands would be of that compared to what it's doing now?
I think that's a very good question. And the way things, there's two things to consider there. One is changes in the way we support computation. So there's interesting companies doing, creating different chips than the GPUs, right? Some are bigger and some are much smaller. So if we get to make that computation smarter, we'll be able to save energy. And the other thing is creating, if there is a click in the awareness ability, in the way that all those numbers and all those mathematical semantic features are processed, we may be able to compute without so much power, because right now there is no way for the computations to shrink a lot in a general context, because that's what gives AI its power, right? The ability to what's called long-term dependencies, to connect the first word in my sentence to the last word in my last paragraph. And that's why the computations becomes very small, very, very large. I think if transformers, basically, once we get to transformers 2.0, I think that will be much more efficient.
So
Sorry, the way we ask or prompt the ChatGPT or any AI, that will affect the like all this energy behind it.
And it does. I think the best answer will be Diana's idea of mindful interaction. Use it for things that are meaningful and that will help you move forward, and don't just ask just to ask, because it's easy to ask ChatGPT as simple, what's 2 + 2, even though math is not its thing. But
That's true.
right, it's if you have your answer in your head, don't ask the system. You save the computation for something that you really want support with. Would that be a good tip, Diana?
Yeah, AI is not for everything. I mean, there's certain things that still like Google is better suited for, like traditional tools are better suited for. Like AI is not the answer for everything, but there are certain things that the language model is uniquely suited for. So use it for that. So, I mean, AI or language models, have been a new toy now for, almost 2.5, 3 years now. So everyone started thinking like, sort of let's put this on everything, but it's not suited for everything, and it's not the best answer for everything. So.
Well, I think that's a great way to move on to the next Q&A. Diana, thank you so much for being
You're welcome.
here. And I want to remind everybody that we have a channel dedicated to Diana's topics in the community, so we can continue the conversation there. So I want to give you a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. This was a very interesting discussion.
And we're going to welcome Jacob Cass to our next Q&A. Hi, Jacob.
Romina, hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
So good to have you here. Okay. Let's start with you telling us a little bit of what you do and what you do with AI.
Okay, so for people who haven't seen the presentation that I had was on strategy. It was on how to use AI in branding, design, strategy, and it focused on mood boards, custom GPT, branding, identity, as well as how that all works together for building a brand. So that's what my session was focused on, and how I use AI is exactly as I just said there. I use it to help my marketing, my branding, my design services. And yeah, I use it every single day. So I have a lot to share on the topic. And yeah, what would you like to know?
So I think one of the as we get questions, feel free, you guys, to raise your hand or come in with a question. But I have a question about something that other speakers have talked about, which was the experimentation and getting out of your environment and then trying an AI tool versus bringing those AI tools to your workflows. How has that changed for you with all this, movement in the AI world?
Every day there's a new AI tool coming out. So there's plenty to explore. It's really about being curious, as you said, and trying things out, seeing how it works, how can it be integrated into your workflow. And the only way to do that is by trying or watching videos to see the possibilities or joining summits like this. So, but at the end of the day, it is about using it it's about using AI for your use case scenarios. And that's where it's tailored to each person. So you really need to get in there, try the tools, and continuously evolve them as well. And don't get stuck in your ways, because there are better tools coming out all the time. And if you get stuck in your ways, you may not be doing things as effectively or efficiently as possible. So for example, you may be using ChatGPT all the time, but have you tried Perplexity or have you tried Claude for the same task that you're doing? And you may be pleasantly surprised that there's a better output just by crossing over to the other side.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to say, and it's something that Nora mentioned earlier. Go and try even the same prompt. So it's a little bit of an experiment, right? We keep everything the same prompt, the same goal, the same audience, but try a different model or a different interface and see which one works better for your use case.
Yeah, or create your own GPT. And it's really easy to do that. And I touched on that as well. If you can't find something that works for you, create your own. So for me, it was about logo design. I really want to have something that outputted something simple and creative and flat, and that the principles that I find most strong in like timeless logos. And the regular ChatGPT and Gen AI tools wasn't really giving me the output that I was looking for. So I gave it all the variables and trained it to output the things that I wanted. So you can do the same with your writing. You define all your voice and you define your output and your audience and all of those things you've been talking about.
I think one of the applications that I see actually from your session that I'm very interested in exploring further is actually using that ability to guide the style of the visual output, also for visual support of our writing content. A lot of times, particularly in plain language, we want to give a visual cue of what's going on. For example, I don't know if I'm talking about the heart and some issue with the heart, well, to show. And of course, for those of you who haven't seen Jacob's session yet, go see it and look at the logos. There's a super flowery, tropical one that comes out, and it's very vibrant, but it may be too busy, for example. And so that's, I think, something that I could translate into my everyday work is get that as your basis and then tweak it to create, I think you used a flat illustration style.
Exactly. So you just refine it. And I think that's the trick with a lot of prompts is just constant input and output is like refining, and so forth. But you make a good point there about getting the details that you need to communicate to someone else to execute on. So for example, if you're not getting the exact output you want for a design or a visual or a graphic, then you can ask it to define the vibe or the variables. So the colors, the type, the style, the photography, and the art direction. You can ask ChatGPT or whatever AI tool you're using to extract that information in plain written form, and then you can pass that on to a designer or a copywriter or a web designer or whoever you're working with.
So do you use it? And I know this is the core of what you do. So visual. What's your most frequent use case? Do you use it with clients? Do you use it internally?
I use ChatGPT the most every single day, multiple times a day, and often it is to refine my original words or to understand something better or to brainstorm ideas. So for example, I may ask it to respond to an email. Someone's written something like they want to be on my podcast. I'm like, respond to this with a custom response. You chuck in the very long email and it'll actually write back in a very fluid way, touching on each of the points. So it's a little bit more personable than just saying, oh, no, thanks, I'm not available at the moment. But it's just like, you're actually listening, you've read my email, and it's just much better to receive. And I've been on the other side of being like declined. So I want to make sure that if you are getting declined, it's done in a nice way. So that's one example. Other ways are, brainstorming landing page copy for a website. What's the flow? I could put in someone else's website, ask it to analyze it. What's the layout of this? And then I can put in my data and say, we'll match this layout and craft a better story. Or I may have done a survey and I'll chuck all the data in. I'll ask it to create some graphs, analyze the data, output the key points, summarize things. When I'm in like the creative mode, I may use it for like a rapid ideation tool. So I've created custom GPTs for mood boards and for logos and for even brand strategy insights as well, trying to extract information. Like there's so much. I could go on and on, but yeah, every day.
I just want to share that I think that the ideation use also translates to something we do in plain language a lot, which is considering the audience and building a user persona or a customer persona. And sometimes getting that input of what, from all of the training data that we were talking about, all of the training data these models have, they may have insights into what the style, the jargon, the preferences of an audience, for example, a young audience versus an older audience may have for talking about X topic, or for seeing, I do tweak a lot of the visuals. When I go to younger audience, they like anime style a lot better than more realistic illustrations, for example.
Yep. Yeah, you do have to tailor it, and you can also, dictate the output that you want. And something that I use regularly is like explain it like I'm 5. If there's something that I'm unfamiliar with, or there's something complex that I want to explain to my children, for example, I'm like, well, can you explain it like I'm 5? And it's really amazing how it does that. It gives metaphors for something simple. Like I think I asked about like, what's quantum computing, for example, explain it like I'm 5. And it gave me like an example about a light switch and how light switches are generally on and off. Well, quantum computing, it can be on and off at the same time. I'm like, that's a really smart way to explain it. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And it makes for a supercomputer. And they had other examples as well, but that's just one idea.
So one of the things I want to show you, something that has happened to me, and I don't know if this is so let's see if I can do this and share at the same time. I want to share my screen. You guys tell me if you see it, okay?
Yep.
Okay, and now sorry, so I talked about changing the style of things, so I changed the style of things. I combine things, and for example, I had this done, and this is what I explain. I do this visually, but I also do this with text, right? And then we have like a mix of things, and I ask it to mix styles. So I do this, but the output may depend on what the model was trained on. So let me go back to, let's see, this one right here. So these are the exact same prompt in DALL-E and in Adobe Firefly. And it's a completely different output. Do you have that? Like, do you have a favorite system for certain things? I don't know if, it seems to be the prompt for this was, give me an image of Einstein dressed in my favorite soccer team's jersey. And one was Einstein in Estudiantes de La Plata jersey, and one was something that has nothing to do with that. Do you see this happening in the tools that you use, or have you tweaked them so that the messages are now, you get you go in the direction you want with the style and the content?
Okay, so this brings up a topic around ethics and training data, right? So Adobe Firefly was trained on mostly the Adobe stock. There are some nuances with that. There was AI images that were uploaded to Firefly, and they were kind of caught out on that. But generally, they hawk that they have used just their own stock to train their data with Adobe Firefly. And that's why you're not getting, photos of Disney and Disney characters or Einstein in there, because it's used its own stock to train. Whereas DALL-E or Midjourney, for example, they've pretty much scraped the whole internet and thousands and millions of images to create their training data. So that's why you often get watermarks in some of your creations. So that's something you have to consider. Like, what is the use case scenario here for what you're producing? And that's going to dictate where you create. Because if you want to use it for commercial purposes, you have to consider that. Also, ethical reasons, if you're selling things, you have to consider that as well. So coming back to the point of the output, I do change up the tools depending on the style that I'm looking for. I used to use Midjourney quite a bit. Then I stopped using that and just used ChatGPT because it got much better. And then occasionally I'll use some other tools. But these days I have a pro subscription to ChatGPT, and it does most of the things that I need. And I have all the custom GPTs built there. So I do use that. I do use Firefly as well because I have an Adobe subscription, being a designer and all.
And that, I think this actually goes into one of the questions that we had in the community about issues of copyright. And when you have output from this, what is the proper way to go about that.
Yeah, so you have to consider every single tool's different policies and their training data, and there are some gray areas, and this is still being worked out. The laws are trying to catch up, and we're very far behind seeing anything. So there's a lot of cases going on right now with artists suing, and even celebrities, and whole Hollywood drama and clones of characters. Like it's too early to say. I believe it comes down to a personal decision on how you use the tools. So, for example, you personally may not want to use the voice of someone's writer, like someone's some character, for example. So you could ask it to, rap in the style of Eminem or create a poem in the style of some famous poet. Is that ethical to you? And is that going to achieve what you want to do? Like, it's a personal choice on how you use the tool. So that's how I've come down to it. I use AI, but that's built on like other people's work, right? So even using AI by itself, like there is an ethical consideration there. So you have to draw the line somewhere, and that comes down to you.
And do you consider that on a case-by-case basis? Like, do you look at the output that you get and how you're going to use it down the line? Like, to me, I do that, and I have a very I want to think I have a very particular voice in my writing, for example, and that's what I bring in when I'm doing documents for clients. And so I do use AI for support, but I go back and make it mine. And so what it is, and I consider, what's interesting is that I consider the direction before I go into the AI, because I don't want to be rerouted by it into a style that wasn't originally mine. But that conscious idea that, okay, I'm going back in and I wanted to have my voice, and I disclose in every project that I'm if I'm using that for support. Do you see that happening more, that people are saying, okay, this is AI assisted work?
It's actually been embedded in a lot of the metadata in some of the images, and that's come into text as well. So there will be a watermark in the text. So there's technology that, if you copy paste for an AI tool, this is from Google, for example, it'll be able to understand that that's from AI. And I'm assuming this is because Google, has a problem with all the AI generated content, and they're trying to filter out what's human and what's AI. So this is their way of combating some of that. So that's how I see it. Like I don't personally disclose that anything's AI generated when it comes to copy. But if it's imagery, yes, I'll say that. But it's also baked into a lot of social platforms now. If you've used AI to generate something, it will actually tag it with a little symbol saying it was AI generated. You may have seen it on LinkedIn or Instagram, for example.
It's interesting that some in some contexts, and even the style already tells you that this was a
yeah, totally. It's like it's very cartoonish still, a lot of output. It's getting way better, but there's often times when I can't even tell the difference though. So it is getting very impressive.
Okay, if you can't tell the difference, then it is getting very impressive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's go into the fun. Your brand is really fun and vibrant and very clean. And I enjoy visually your output a lot. So what's what has been a fun project that you used AI for, that is like, oh, this was, it would have been much more difficult before, and it was fun to do?
Okay, so seeing that we're talking about my brand, you would have noticed the flamingo t-shirts and the flamingo cushions and statue in the background. So the flamingo is a big part of our brand. Pinky is his name, and he's our mascot for our Just Creative Studio. And how that came to be, long story short, was that I shared a post around what animal is your brand, and I was like, well, what animal is our brand? And I'm like, flamingo. And I just shared that, and it really caught on. Like, people were sending me photos, and this reminded me of you. I started getting gifts of flamingos, and it really struck that flamingo is associated with my brand. And that was never really the intention, but it really stuck with people. And a year or two ago, I leaned into this and created an actual mascot. And it's like a low poly 3D style. He's got glasses on. He's a bit suave, a bit cool. And he's got a cool vibe about him. But how I got to that point was I was using AI to generate ideas on the fly, like literally hundreds and hundreds of different flamingo ideas and different styles. Like, I'm like, maybe it's like a lion crossed with a flamingo. And like, I generated all these AI images, and like, it had a mane and everything. It looked so cool. I got a t-shirt made out of it, but it just wasn't right for the brand. And I eventually came down to this style that resonated with my brand, being very clean and sharp and edgy, but also fun at the same time. And yeah, I settled on this low poly idea, which is an aesthetic. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's like triangles that kind of form a shape. And that's why it's called low poly. And yeah, I'm like, I just generated tons of different ideas, all different tools to come up with something that would suit our brand. And then I had some reference images. Then I worked with a 3D illustrator, or 3D artist, to actually bring it to life. So it was creating these, I guess, core ideas, core styles that I could then showcase to an actual artist to bring it to life. So then it would actually be a 3D version that you could rotate and create and animate and actually look more tangible. Yeah, so that's how I used it in a fun project.
That is actually it's very fun, and I didn't know that about the brand. And if you guys haven't visited Jacob's website, Just Creative, it's really fun to visit.
Okay, yes, yeah. So we have some fun with the sayings like "stand the flock out" and "let's flaming go," and there's a few others ones you'll find in there. But like, our whole mantra is like "stand the flock out," but flock ordinary, flock bland, flock vanilla, and that's what our mantra is. We help brands stand the flock out.
I love that. I think I have a comment about some of the stock imagery, and for example, Freepik has AI imagery. It says it's developed by AI. How is that? How have you seen the evolution, or do you feel the evolution of these stock places, and is it changing the landscape of what visual designers are doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't buy AI stock photography. I find that strange because you could generate your own original image, you could even reference that image. So I don't think I've ever done that, but I can see the use case scenarios. But for me, I just try to generate something unique, so then someone else can't buy it and use it somewhere else. Anyway, that aside, as a designer, we use tools like Adobe every day. And there are AI tools baked into there now, which makes it very easy to manipulate and edit photography and designs. So for example, if I had like an image, let's say it's underwater shot, and I wanted to add a shark into the image. Usually before AI was here, you'd have to get another image, morph it in, match all the highlights and the shadows, and it would be a very labor-intensive process. These days, you can just circle where you want the shark to be and click generate, and it will generate the shark, 3 different options, and match the light and the shadows, and it will just seamlessly fit into the image. And that saves hours of time. So that's called generative AI, and it's in things like Photoshop. It's even in Illustrator now, so you can have vector versions of that. So there are online versions now like Adobe Firefly, Adobe Express. I believe Canva even has this as well. I don't use Canva personally, but I believe that generative AI is part of that. So if you're wanting to create things on the fly very seamlessly, use these tools because you can, create things of your own very quickly.
And for those of you who haven't watched the presentation, Jacob's presentation, you can actually see what he just described. You can see it. happen on the screen. The shark appearing and disappearing.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, it is very cool. And it was, I remember trying some of the first tools, and it was very sort of pixelated, and now it's very seamless how it picks up on shadows and lights, and it changes the colors, and so yeah, it really makes it very vibrant.
Yeah, and I'm using it quite often with some of my client work. So, for example, product shots. If I have a static image of a teacup, for example, and I want to add some steam, I can just circle where I want the steam to be and click add steam, and it'll add it. So I don't have to search for stock or anymore and buy stock. I can literally just generate something on the fly or match it all seamlessly. Or if I want to change the flavor of the tea, I don't have to change the teacup. Maybe I just want some flowers in front of the teacup. I can just circle where I want that to be, click, generate lavender, and it'll generate that. Or maybe I want a different herb there. I can click generate and it'll change it on the fly. So it does really streamline the process if you know the availability of these tools. So if you're trying to create content in more tangible use here rather than teacups, if you're trying to create content for marketing, for example, you could generate something on the fly, not having to purchase any imagery to communicate your message.
I mean, I can see how there's a changing landscape of, especially for product display and advertisements. The example that you used in the presentation about the coffee cup, and then we have packaging where a box where we can maybe, I don't know, ship our ground coffee or whatever product it is, and how that maybe it's displacing a little bit the creation of things, and it's giving more ownership to the creators of the products. So it's a lot people we've been talking, there's the slogan of the summit is AI will not replace you, but a person using AI will. And so this is where we want to get our hands and try things and make sure that we can integrate and understand, because we may even be called on to tweaking something produced by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really a tool to support us, and it helps with productivity in one sense. But I also think AI is misunderstood when you really look at what AI is, going beyond just things like ChatGPT, and how diverse it is across all different fields, whether it be medicine and agriculture, robotics. Like AI is built into so many different things, and it's just so widely misunderstood. Another way to think about AI is it's basically a software. It's like an algorithm that gives you an output, a system. It's not like an output of like a GPT that gives you text or some images. It's literally software. It's an algorithm. So you have to understand that when you think about AI, and not just be boxed into like ChatGPT.
Yeah, and we've been saying this since the beginning, and people are asking about the different models. And yes, there's a lot of different models. There's millions of models. If you go, and I'm going to put this URL on the chat so you guys can peruse these at your leisure. Hugging Face. Hugging Face is a hub for open source models that has a ton of visual models, language models, text to speech, speech to text, text to image, image to speech, a lot. And if you go to the model area, you will see right now there's over 1 million models available. So certainly there's a lot of options. Playing around with some of them. I think it's kind of like the beginning of the internet. I remember, this age is me. I remember when we could visit the whole of the internet in the 90s.
Yep, like an IP address.
And now, I mean, it's impossible to say you're going to visit every page on the internet. The same thing is happening with the models, but try a few, find your area, right? Like your development like this is, I think your presentation was very good at helping us writers think about expressing some things visually, both for content and for our businesses. So, and I would highly recommend checking out Jacob's services, which are, we haven't even mentioned these, but he's an amazing branding designer. So, you see these kind of collaboration is something also that we can be enhanced by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for that shout out. Yeah, I do help brands grow and businesses grow, and I do that through strategy, design, and marketing. And yeah, I'm happy to talk shop with anyone that needs help with any of those things.
Okay, I know we're coming to the break. I want to send you a big round of applause. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing with us, for being here. I absolutely well, we did talk about this. There's a last minute question. How do you address copyright with the images generated? We talked about this a lot, but maybe a last thought about copyright.
Yeah, so I'd whatever tool you're using, look at their services, because every one is different. It's trained on different models and data. Sorry, it's trained on different data, so you have to consider what is trained on and the copyright, and each use case scenario is different. So it really does depend. There's no one size fits all answer here. And Ramita, there's one thing I did want to shout out around the custom GPTs that I've talked about. You can actually access them for free on our website. So justcreative.com. It's called the branding briefcase. If you download the branding briefcase, you'll find on there a pop-up will come up. It's inside that branding briefcase, along with a bunch of other goodies, branding, design, copywriting, and so forth. But if you're looking for those GPTs, that's where you'll find it.
And you guys, if you have a VIP, Jacob has an incredible resource also. So go check it out. And we will. So what will happen now? Thank you, Jacob, again for taking time out of your next day. For us in California, it's still Thursday and it's Friday for Jacob. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we'll take a half-hour break and come back for more Q&As at the top of the hour.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.